1.3. Creating characters. The secret to the sitcom is not the situation, but the characters. How do you go about creating them? There's no one particular way or effective method that I know of beyond encountering odd or extreme characters in real life and changing their name, or not bothering and hoping they don't find out. It could be someone you know well, or a colleague, or a friend of a friend you know a little bit. It could be a type you've read about in a magazine or book. Maybe a particularly demented explorer like a Captain Scott of the Antarctic, or a Shackleton, or a tech genius like Steve Jobs, or a fictional character like an Elizabeth Bennett, or a Macbeth or a Falstaff. It really doesn't matter what primes the pump, just get it going. Find a starting point that appeals to you and work from there. You can spend a lot of time thinking about backstory, but what you really need to know is what gets them out of bed in the morning. What motivates them? What do they want? And how does this differ from what they actually need? Thinking big again. Ask big questions of your characters so that you get to know them. Ask all kinds of crazy questions. Don't just ask what your character likes, but what is your character's most prized possession? If your character were to be offered 3 wishes by a genie, what would they wish for? Who would your character most like to meet, living or dead? Who do they most admire? Who is their deadliest enemy? What book really speaks to them? What is their dream job, as opposed to their real job? And if they were Prime Minister for the day, what would they do? Where in the world would they most like to go? Working out the answers to these questions will help you work out the big themes and wants in your character's life. Big answers. Don't just think of big questions. Have big answers. Sitcom characters need to be big and bold. They don't need to be brash and shouty necessarily, but they do need a crystal clear point of view and perspective. If you're basing your character on someone you know well, you might be tempted to make your character too moderate. It may make your character more realistic, but might make them less real. A character description may read thus: Matilda knows what she wants and doesn't suffer fools gladly, but sometimes she can be thoughtful and isn't afraid to make herself vulnerable. Who is Matilda? Who knows? I can't write that character. She doesn't have a consistent viewpoint. I don't know what she wants. In a sitcom, you need a character who is always too thoughtful or vulnerable, or never thoughtful or vulnerable. The audience need to know who your characters are and what motivates them. Mixed motives and ambiguity are the enemy of sitcom. It sounds daft, but you don't really want well-rounded characters. You want characters with a unique and consistent perspective, and permanent predictable goals. Great comedy characters have that. Basil Fawlty is trying to run a classy hotel. This underpins his action week after week. We know how he's going to react in any given situation. We enjoy the extremity of it, like the time he beat a car with a branch of a tree. You instinctively know how Edina from Ab Fab or Captain Mannering from Dad's Army are going to respond to a new challenge or go about achieving a goal. Ultimately, keep asking questions of your characters until you feel you know them. Let's work up a quick example, going back to this wishy-washy Matilda character. Matilda works in an office. She's very junior, being only 19. She's got a couple of A-levels, both grade D, and she's keen to progress in the company. That's still just information about her. Who is she? Let's interrogate the character, asking big questions and get some big answers. Why does Matilda want to progress? What motivates her to do that? Does she want status and prestige? Does she want the money that goes with the job and therefore the status of material goods? Or is it a rivalry with someone else? It should only really be one of these things. What company is Matilda working for? Why that company? What does that company say about her or the world we're in? Does a relative work there who got her a junior job? Does the company do something that she despises? Why isn't she at university? Does she wish she were at university? Okay, so how about this? Matilda works in an office. She's very junior, being only 19. She's got a couple of A-levels, both grade D, and she's keen to progress in the company because she can't go to university, mainly because she needs to look after her dad, her mum left or died, and her little sister, who, frankly, is trouble. That's still not specific enough. Too much factual information and not enough character. We now know that Matilda is the breadwinner, a noble hero. Interesting, potentially, although maybe a bit boring. But at least we like her and have real sympathy for her. Given that, maybe she can have more leeway and behave badly, doing the wrong thing for the right reason because she's trying to provide for her family. Or even, given her life situation, has a right to be more selfish given she's been dealt a bad hand. We need to keep asking more and more questions. Is she happy about this having to work thing? Does she relish the challenge? Does she use her sob story to get what she wants? Is she a modern-day Machiavelli? Or is she good-hearted and ill-suited to office work and more of a homemaker? Does she idolise Alan Sugar or Mary Berry? Does she aspire to be an entrepreneur? Is she a natural but can't make the leap? Or is she deluded in her aspiration? In fact, is it better to have Matilda being an entrepreneur from the start? Is she too big for a small company? Does she despise her boss because of his lack of ambition? Sooner or later, once you make a few decisions, you can stop telling your characters what's what and realise that they're telling you what they like and what they want. Eventually, you'll hit upon someone you're excited about writing. At that point, you've got a character. If you've got time and a scrap of paper, create your own version of Matilda. Who is she? What does she want out of life? Who does she idolise? What would her perfect night out be? What's her favourite fairy story? What's her dream home? What does she order in Starbucks if she goes there? What would she do if she got a flat tyre? Does she like birthdays? Make up your own questions and ask them. Big characters. It may be uncomfortable to push characters to these extremes because they seem unreal and sitcom-y, but in the first instance, you need that simplicity and clarity on your characters. Your audience needs a hook to understand the character quickly, so they can stop worrying about being new to the show and start enjoying the story and the jokes. More on clarity in other chapters. Anyhow, big comedy characters exist in real life. You may be related to one or work with one. You simply can't figure out how they get through the day, have children, fill in a tax return or cook dinner. And some characters are more extreme still. Think about Gordon Ramsay. He actually exists. Or Christine Hamilton, Simon Cowell, Margaret Thatcher, Brian Clough, Mary Portas, Anne Widdecombe. Basil Fawlty was based on a real person who ran a small hotel that John Cleese was staying in. He tells the story of how he was convinced a briefcase contained a bomb and how he dealt with it by grabbing it and hurling it across the car park. Fawlty is just an exaggeration of an already existing person. The reason we can identify with a Del Boy, or a Miranda, or a Victor Meldrew, or a Hyacinth Bouquet, or a Captain Mannering is because they remind us of people we know. These characters ring true, and that is what your sitcom must ultimately be about. The truth.